So this is Chad Cargis, part two, basically. He testified, among other things, that when he was there on the 1st of January, the only building he accessed was basically the headquarters visitor center, where his office was located. That's the only building that he checked the lock on, so he couldn't, he said, testify from any kind of personal knowledge what, if any, other buildings were actually locked or secured at the refuge. He thought that some of them were locked, but he acknowledged that what he referred to as cold storage buildings would not have been locked. Butch Eaton, in his testimony, likewise said that visitor center building was locked, and they just moved on. They didn't do anything about that. They went from building to building, checking to see which ones were locked and unlocked, to kind of make an assessment about that. So Chad Cargis couldn't say one way or the other except for the one building. He testified, among other things, about the history of the refuge in terms of land use. And that ended up being one of the big issues of contention that drew numerous objections from the government attorneys with respect to this issue of ownership, with respect to the history of ownership, the title, and jurisdiction issues. And those issues became the subject of a lot of objections and debate between the attorneys and the judge told the attorneys she just wasn't going to allow that issue to be addressed at this point in time. There are pending motions about that, and so that became one of the points of contention. He also testified that the Paiute Indians, the local Burns Paiute tribe, had been using that land for thousands of years, in his words. And so one of the questions that came up on cross-examination was, why didn't they still own the land? But Judge Brown was not willing to allow him to talk about that. The government made an objection. She sustained it. He testified about, this is interesting, he testified about a nonprofit group that spends time at the refuge, has space there, utilizes government property, government assets, and is treated, it's a private, nonprofit entity. It's not government funded, it's not part of the government, but they have office space there. They utilize government property and assets as part of their operation, and they come and go and have access to a lot of those things. So questions were asked about what is the distinction between that group and their personnel, for example, and the occupiers, and why should they be treated differently? And there wasn't really a good answer to that question. I'm already over the 3-minute mark, so I'm going to wrap this one up and come back with another one to try to wrap up the entire segment.